Is depth of field, rather shallow depth of field, our greatest tool for creativity now? It seems to be a massive thing that with the new technology, the new lenses, to go to the 1.2s, and it all seems like the must-have thing to go to the next step to create better photos. So this is my video discussing our kind of obsession with this shallow depth of field, my obsession with it. I mean, I'm looking forward to the 85. If it's a 1.2, then that's really appealing to me. But I have, the 85 1.8 for portraits and other photography, and I love it. I don't think the clients would be able to tell that I've used a 1.2. I'm not sure they will, but I will be able to because it's part of my desire to do so. Is there an argument that the shallower the depth of field, does that make a better photo? Not sure. I mean, we all appreciate the bokeh and the effect of bokeh, with the shapes and sizes of the lights and hexagons and so forth. But is this just an obsession within the photography community itself? And then, this is my staple camera for weddings. It's this 24-70 2.8. So I also use this 85 1.8 as a second body to shoot with for more artistic shots when I have the time. And sure, the depth of field is nicer with this, but it's also nice with my 24-70. When we've been doing lens reviews and body reviews and how to make the best pictures with our videos over the last few months, it's become clear that a staple of a professional photo seems to be the depth of field. I mean, that's quite a respected thing now throughout history of photography, and now is that if you present someone or a client with an isolated subject with a shallow depth of field, like I'm filming this now with a 51.8, I'll put it on 1.8 to get the best effect from it. So is the 1.2 lenses really representing a pursuit for artistic brilliance? Does it allow a great artistic perspective and capability than the 1.8s? I'm not sure. I mean, it's up to debate, and maybe it will. I'd love to use one though. I'd love to have one, and maybe I will in the future, just for curiosity's sake. And would that actually make much difference compared to the cost of the lens and the other variables with that as well? It's an interesting one, isn't it? But would a client, or would someone who isn't a photographer, notice the difference between using a 1.8 and a 1.2? You have to think about how photographs are composed in that. Obviously, the closer you are to the subject and the further away the background is, all has an impact on the bokeh. So can you get the same effect using a longer lens, or being close to the subject, or further away from the background? Is this obsession become too much and we're starting to ignore other concepts of photography, such as using the background? I always buy my lenses used or second hand, and I got this for like £500, this 85 1.8. And of course the 1.2s are much bigger lenses, heavier. I wouldn't want to carry it all day. I mean, they often say which is the best camera and which lens to use. Well, it's the one you've got with you. I mean, are we forgetting about a photographer's artistic vision, using everything available, such as light, composition, working with the client or the people to make them relaxed, or the product, the right position, composition? So even mobile phone technology now can reproduce the shallow depth of field even after taking the photo. So even my iPhone now, which I'm using SnapBridge to compose the shot, which is really cool, but even this now has the ability to add shallow depth of field after I take the photo, which is just crazy, really, isn't it? That's incredible. So now it's become commonplace for everyone to use it. Will it lose its professional look? Because of course, historically, only the most professional, expensive cameras could make a shallow depth of field shot, and therefore it was seen as prestigious and professional. But now everyone can do it. Is it so prestigious? So this is just a simple demonstration to show the depth of field change when taking photos. So this is at 1.8, and obviously this is quite close to the subject, and it's quite close to the background actually, but 1.8, it does blur it out quite nicely, even the dish at the bottom there. So let's change it to 2.8, and not much difference, but maybe side by side they would be. So let's go to f4. Again, this is where you can start to see the sharpness in the background come out. Maybe the sharpness of the actual subject won't change though, and that would be an interesting one. So let's go all the way through to f10, f11, and then we can go to f16. And obviously the background is quite a lot more in focus now, but not that much, because I'm quite close to the subject. So obviously f16 to f1.8 is a big difference. Maybe the next obsession is to not use 1.8, is to use f11s and get everything focused in the background and tell the story using composition, line of sight, light, shape. All these kind of things can come together to create maybe an even more powerful photo than just simply blurring it out. Of course, you know, we use the depth of field in a lot of situations because the backgrounds are often rubbish, aren't they? You know, you have a blank wall or a kitchen like I'm using here, or when I'm doing weddings, they're just not good backgrounds. So if you blur them out, it kind of makes them artistic, like a portrait, like a painted portrait of the past, I suppose. But of course, in the past, photographers wanted to freeze the action. Of course, with old cameras, they couldn't get that high ISO or ASA as it was then with film cameras. So a lower f-stop allowed a higher shutter speed to allow more light into the camera. But now, of course, digitally, the ISO performance is so spectacular that you don't necessarily need low f-stops to be able to get a higher shutter speed. Of course, it also used to be the case that even with my DSLR 50 1.4, at 1.4 I didn't really use it that because it was so soft. Even for portraits, it was too soft. I mean, obviously with portraits you don't want it to be fully sharp, but I found that with wide open on the old DSLR lenses, they were too soft and just too flat of an image. But with these, I can happily shoot 85 at 1.8 happily. I know it's really sharp. Same with the 50mm and the 70-200 as well. In our past experiments show that a 2.8, even at 200, is almost as sharp as the rest of the range. So is this shallow depth of field a fad and a real obsession just within photographers? When the 85 1.2 does come out, I really want one because I'd love to use that creative depth of field, but then would it actually cause problems? Because it would create a narrower depth of field for focus. And with portraits, you might have one eye in focus, the other eye not in focus with a 1.2. I sometimes have that with the 1.8. So would it create more problems? I mean, you could say that going for the 1.2 is at such a big expense. Is it like a photography obsession to have the best equipment? Are we all gearheads now? For most people, it's about what's the actual photo is. Is it nicely composed? Does the person look nice? Is it good lighting? And is it in focus? So those things are much more important than the shallow depth of field. But still, I'm obsessed with the shallow depth of field too. I'm shooting this at 1.8. I'd like to shoot at the lowest apertures as possible. So this is the example. I'm using SnapBridge 2 on my phone. It's so good. For composition, I can control it. It's amazing technology. But this is at 1.8. So you can just about see, where are we? I can see there, just above here, there is a lens here. But it's obviously at 1.8, so you can't see. So now I've changed it to f16. Obviously, that's quite an extreme one. But now you can see the lens. Boop, boop. That's my 50-250 DX lens, which I use for wildlife extended. And you can see it's in good focus, but you can also see all the backgrounds quite clearly now, and that's maybe not something you want. I mean, it doesn't look that messy, does it? But, you know, if I switch back to 1.8, it is a more pleasing picture. But that's something we've come to acknowledge as a professional photo. I know that the 1.2 lenses are better at other things as well, but sharpness-wise, tests have shown that they're pretty much the same sharpness, 1.8 and so forth. So for a 0.6 f difference, you're paying £2,000 extra. I mean, let's forget about the cost then. Is, you know, the technology really allowing us to be more creative? That's something that we have to debate with ourselves, I think, and within the photography community. I mean, is the push for the best photos, the best technology, I mean, will it create the most artistic photos we can possibly do now? Will it take us to the next stage of photography evolution? I mean, that's a valid question. I'm excited to pursue myself, but I just can't see myself getting a 1.2 lens with the cost that it is. So I'd be interested to hear your opinions and comments about this. I mean, it's an interesting subject. There aren't any right or wrong answers. I mean, photography is about using your artistic skills. So if it does allow a more artistic pursuit and create better photos, then it's worth it, don't you think?